My aunt left my cousin at a gas station during a family trip to cheer up her daughter. But everyone regretted it. I don't even know where to begin. But my family is imploding, and I'm pretty sure I'm the one who lit the fuse. I need an outside perspective because half my relatives are calling me a hero, and the other half are acting like I'm some kind of monster. It all started on our annual family road trip. Every year, my Aunt Sylvia, my cousins Clara, 16F, and Diego, 15M, and I, 19F, drive down the Peruvian coast. It sounds idyllic, I know. The Pacific on one side, desert landscapes on the other. But in reality, it's 4 people trapped in a metal box of simmering resentment for 10 hours. It's always been a pressure cooker, but this year it finally exploded. To understand what happened, you have to understand my aunt. Sylvia is the self-appointed queen of our family, and her entire universe orbits around her daughter, Clara. Clara is a lot. She's perpetually gloomy, and my aunt has weaponized her moods into a family-wide crisis management system. Sylvia has spent years constructing this narrative, where Clara is a fragile, sensitive soul who must be protected at all costs. And in this little 2-person play she directs, my cousin Diego is always cast as the villain. There's this unspoken rule that we've all been forced to live by. Clara's feelings are paramount. Everything else is secondary. I have watched my aunt praise Clara for bursting into tears over nothing, calling it a sign of her deep emotional intelligence, only to turn around and scold Diego for sighing too loudly, accusing him of provoking his sister. I once saw him get a perfect score on a math test he'd studied weeks for, and Sylvia barely glanced at it before fussing over a mediocre drawing Clara had made, framing it like it was a goddamn masterpiece. Diego just learned to fold into himself, to take up less space. This trip was no different. From the moment we packed the SUV, the air was thick with that familiar tension. Sylvia had already engineered a seating arrangement that left Diego squished in the middle, his long legs cramped, because Clara needed the window to calm her nerves. We weren't even an hour out of Lima, and the stage was already set. Clara was pouting, staring out the window with this look of profound tragedy on her face because Diego had accidentally brushed her arm. Sylvia, of course, was in full defense mode, shooting daggers at him through the rearview mirror. You could feel the storm brewing, that low-pressure headache that comes before a massive fight. We were all just waiting for the trigger. This is just how she operates, you know? It's never one big, obvious act of cruelty. It's 1,000 tiny cuts. I remember one trip a few years ago we stopped for snacks. Sylvia made this huge show of remembering that Clara's favorite treat was a specific brand of alfajores from this one tiny bakery. She went on and on about how she'd gone out of her way to get them because she knew her sensitive girl needed a little comfort. Then she turned to Diego, who loved the salty, crunchy trifles from the north, and with this wide-eyed, innocent look, she said, "Oh, sweetie, I completely forgot yours. My mind is just so full with taking care of Clara." Diego just mumbled, "It's okay," and stared out the window for the next hour. But I saw his shoulders slump. It wasn't about the snack. It was a message. She is remembered. You are. Forgotten. This time felt like that, but amplified by 100. The SUV was an oven. The air conditioning was wheezing out lukewarm air that smelled faintly of plastic and old sunscreen. We were stuck in traffic outside of Chincha, and the sun was beating down on the black asphalt, making the air shimmer. It was suffocating. Clara had her headphones on, but I knew she wasn't listening to music. It was her armor, her do not disturb sign to the world. She was slumped against the window, her breath fogging up a little patch on the glass, radiating this aura of teenage misery. And Sylvia, my God, Sylvia was fanning the flames with the precision of a master arsonist. Every little thing Diego did was a federal crime. He shifted his legs to get comfortable. "Diego, please be mindful of Clara's space. She's feeling very overwhelmed." He cleared his throat. "Is everything all right, Diego? You're making so much noise, it's hard for your sister to find any peace." Her voice was dripping with that fake, syrupy concern she uses when she's about to go for the jugular. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, and Diego was her only target. I just sat in the front seat, staring straight ahead, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. The final piece clicked into place about an hour before everything went to hell. Diego's phone had died hours ago. He'd been quiet, just watching the landscape go by, but I could tell he was getting restless. He finally spoke up, his voice soft, almost apologetic. "Aunt Sylvia, can I please use the charger? My phone's been dead since we left." The car's only charger was, of course, plugged into Clara's phone. She wasn't even using it. It was just sitting on the seat next to her, screen dark. Sylvia didn't even turn around. She just looked in the rearview mirror, her eyes cold. Clara needs that, Diego. She uses her phone to regulate her emotions. Regulate her emotions? What does that even mean? Before Diego could even respond, Clara mumbled, without taking off her headphones, "I need it." That was it. End of discussion. Diego didn't argue. He just deflated. It was that same slump from the snack incident, but worse. He leaned his head back against the seat, closed his eyes, and just completely shut down. He was trapped, disconnected, with absolutely no power. And as I sat there listening to the hum of the engine and the sound of my own blood pounding in my ears, I knew something awful was about to happen. The whole car felt like it, was filled with gasoline, and my aunt was just looking for a match. And then it happened. The match was struck. It wasn't even a real fight. Diego, bored out of his skull and with no phone to distract him, started quietly tapping out a rhythm on his knee. Just a light, absent-minded thump-thump tappity-thump. It was barely audible over the drone of the engine and the struggling AC, but in that car, it was a gunshot. Clara ripped her headphones off. "Can you stop that?" she snapped, her voice sharp and ugly. "God, it's so annoying. You're doing it on purpose." Diego just blinked, pulled out of his daze. "What? I'm not doing anything." "Yes, you are," she whined, her eyes already welling up with those predictable, on-demand tears. "You're trying to get on my nerves. You always do this." And that was all my aunt needed. Sylvia's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror for a split second, and I swear I saw a flicker of triumph in them. She had her excuse. "Diego," she said, her voice dropping into that terrifyingly calm Arctic tone she uses for her lessons. "Apologize to your sister, now." "For what?" Diego asked, and I could hear the genuine confusion in his voice. "I was just tapping my fingers." "You know perfectly well what for," Sylvia said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You know Clara is sensitive to repetitive noises. You were deliberately trying to upset her." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Sylvia, that's insane. He was just—" "Sophia, stay out of this." She cut me off without even looking at me. Her focus was entirely on the rearview mirror, on Diego's reflection. That's when she saw it, a gas station shimmering in the heat haze ahead. A tiny, isolated little building with a single rusty pump, looking like the last outpost on Earth. A slow, deliberate smile spread across her face. It was the most chilling thing I have ever seen. She flicked on the turn signal, the rhythmic click-clack sounding like a countdown to doom. She pulled the SUV, off the highway, the tires crunching on the gravel lot. She killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening, broken only by Clara's theatrical sniffles. "Diego," Sylvia said, turning in her seat to face him fully. Her voice was pure ice. "Get out of the car." Diego stared at her. "What? Why?" "You need to cool off," she said, her expression unreadable. "You need to stand here and think, really think, about your sister's feelings. You need to learn that your actions have consequences." He just looked utterly bewildered. I felt frozen in my seat, a cold dread washing over me. This was new. This was a whole other level of crazy. Diego, probably thinking she just wanted him to stretch his legs for 5 minutes, slowly unbuckled his seatbelt and pushed the door open. He stepped out into the blinding sun, squinting, and shut the door behind him. The second it clicked shut, I heard it. The thwump of the central locks engaging. Sylvia had locked the doors. My head whipped around to look at her. She wasn't looking at Diego. She was looking at Clara in the back seat, her face glowing with a kind of perverse maternal pride. "See, sweetie?" she murmured, reaching back to stroke Clara's hair. Mommy will always protect you. This will show him that you always come first. Then she put the car in drive. My blood turned to ice. What are you doing? I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Sylvia, what the hell are you doing? She ignored me. She just pressed her foot on the accelerator, and the SUV lurched forward. I twisted around in my seat, my hands pressed against the back window. Diego was just standing there, his face a mask of disbelief that was slowly, horribly, morphing into panic. He took a few steps after the car, his mouth open as if to call out, but no sound came, and we just kept driving. I watched him in the side mirror, shrinking into a tiny, helpless figure against the vast, empty desert backdrop. He was 15 years old, with no phone, no water, miles from the nearest town. And we were leaving him there. My aunt, his mother, was abandoning him on the side of a highway to teach him a lesson. For a few seconds, I couldn't process it. My brain just refused to accept the reality of what was happening. My ears were ringing, and the only thing I could focus on was the shrinking image of Diego in the side mirror, a lonely silhouette against the bleached-out sky. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought I might be sick. I opened my mouth to scream at her, to demand she turn the car around, but the words caught in my throat. I looked at my aunt's profile. She was just staring straight ahead, a small, tight smile on her lips, her expression one of utter, serene satisfaction. And in that moment, I was genuinely scared of her. A cold, slithering fear coiled in my gut. This wasn't just a mean-spirited lesson anymore. This was something else. Something unhinged. What if I screamed at her? What if she just pulled over, again, and told me to get out, too? The thought was so paralyzing that I just sat there, frozen, my hands clenched into fists in my lap, my fingernails digging into my palms. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. The silence in the car was a physical weight. It pressed down on me, suffocating and heavy. The only sounds were the drone of the engine, the hiss of the AC, and Clara's quiet, performative sobs from the back seat. They weren't the gut-wrenching cries of someone who had just witnessed something traumatic. They were the sniffles of a spoiled child who had gotten her way. My aunt started humming. A low, cheerful, tuneless hum that vibrated through the car and straight into my bones. It was the most monstrous sound I had ever heard. Every hum was a victory lap. She was celebrating. She was basking in the glow of her own cruelty, and I felt a rage building inside me that was so pure and white-hot it almost scared me. I wanted to reach over and grab the steering wheel. I wanted to claw that smug look right off her face. But the fear was still there, a cold hand wrapped around my heart, squeezing tight. We drove for what felt like an eternity, the desolate landscape of the Pan American Highway stretching out endlessly on either side, cacti and dusty scrubland, no houses, no other cars, nothing. Just us, in our little bubble of psychosis, driving away from a 15-year-old boy we'd left stranded in the middle of nowhere. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't reason with a person who hums after abandoning their own son. Then, Sylvia broke the silence. She glanced into the rearview mirror, not at the road, but at Clara. She let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a sound full of jagged edges. "See?" she said, her voice bright and sickeningly sweet. "He'll learn not to make his sister cry." And just like that, something inside me snapped. It was like a circuit breaker flipped in my brain. The fear just vanished. It was burned away by the fury that erupted in its place. He'll learn? This wasn't a lesson. This was abandonment. This was a crime. Her casual, dismissive cruelty was the final match. The rage wasn't hot and messy anymore. It became something cold, sharp, and clear. Like ice. In that instant, I knew I couldn't just argue with her. I couldn't scream or cry or appeal to a sense of decency that she obviously didn't have. That's what she wanted. She wanted a fight she could win, a scene she could direct. She wanted to twist my words and make me the bad guy, too. No, I wasn't going to play a part in her sick little play, I was going to burn the whole goddamn theater to the ground. I realized I couldn't just get her to go back for Diego. That wasn't enough. She needed to face a consequence she couldn't manipulate, a reality she couldn't warp. She needed to lose control, completely and utterly. And as I sat there, my heart beating with a slow, steady, cold rhythm, I knew exactly how I was going to do it. I took a deep breath, the cold, manufactured air from the AC feeling like a shard of glass in my lungs. Then I turned to my aunt. My voice came out flat, devoid of any emotion I was feeling. Turn the car around, now. Sylvia just glanced at me, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. Don't be so dramatic, Sophia. He needs this. We'll go back when I decide he's learned his lesson. No, I said, my voice still unnervingly calm. We're going back now. She scoffed, a little puff of air. I'm the adult here. I decide. Okay, I said. And I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't even shaking. I felt a strange, icy clarity. I scrolled through my contacts to Tio Marco, her ex-husband, Diego, and Clara's dad. I pressed the call button. Then I pressed the speakerphone icon and the screen record button. The phone started ringing, the tinny sound filling the car's suffocating silence. Sylvia's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide with disbelief, then narrowing with rage. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. Just then, my uncle picked up. "Sophia, is everything okay?" I held the phone up between the two front seats. My voice was as clear as a bell. "Uncle Marco, it's Sophia. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Sylvia just abandoned Diego at the Repsol gas station on the Pan American Highway, about 20 kilometers south of Chincha. She is in the car with me and Clara, and she is refusing to go back for him." All hell broke loose. "Give me that phone!" Sylvia shrieked, her mask of serene control shattering into a million pieces. She lunged for my phone with one hand, causing the SUV to swerve violently across the lane. I jerked back, holding the phone tight. Clara screamed in the back seat. "Sylvia, what is she talking about?" My uncle's voice, now sharp with alarm, blasted from the speaker. "She's lying! She's a manipulative little liar!" Sylvia screamed, her eyes wild as she wrestled with the steering wheel. We were going to circle back. Of course we were going to circle back. It was just a lesson. He needed to learn. "I have you on speakerphone, Sylvia," I said, my voice still level. "And I'm recording this call. Uncle Marco, she said she was doing it to show Clara she always comes first." She locked the doors and drove away. The sound that came from my uncle was something between a roar and a sob. "Put him on the phone. Put my son on the phone." "I can't," I said, the words tasting like acid. "We left him there. We're at least 10 minutes away by now." That's when Sylvia finally broke. A strangled cry tore from her throat. She slammed her foot on the brake, throwing us all forward against our seatbelts. With a furious, desperate move, she yanked the steering wheel, executing a reckless U-turn across the highway. Horns blared from an oncoming truck. She floored the accelerator and we were speeding back the way we came. The entire time she was screaming at me, at my uncle on the phone, at the world. "You've ruined everything. This was a family matter. You just couldn't stay out of it, could you? You had to make it a drama." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. We rocketed back towards the gas station, the speedometer climbing. The drive back was a blur of terror and grim satisfaction. She had finally completely lost control. When the lonely little gas station came back into view, my heart was in my throat. I scanned the gravel lot, desperate for a sign of Diego, but he was gone. The spot where he had been standing, confused and squinting in the sun, was empty. There was no one there. A wave of pure, cold terror washed over me, momentarily eclipsing my anger. What if he'd tried to walk? What if someone had... Sylvia slammed the car into park, the engine still running. Her face was ashen. "Where is he?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Before any of us could move, there was a tap on the driver's side window. It was the gas station attendant, an older man, in a grease-stained blue uniform, his face etched with concern. Sylvia shakily rolled down the window. "Are you the people in this car?" he asked, his voice gravelly. He pointed to our SUV. The boy. The one you left here? Yes. Where is he? Is he okay? Sylvia asked, a frantic edge to her voice. The man's expression hardened. He looked past Sylvia, at me, then at Clara huddled in the back. A boy was left stranded here. No phone, no water. We couldn't just leave him. It's dangerous out here. He took a step back from the car, his gaze unwavering. We called the highway police about 15 minutes ago. They just picked him up. Sylvia slumped against the steering wheel, a wave of relief washing over her face. But the attendant wasn't finished. They took your license plate number for the report, he said, his voice flat and final. They said it's standard procedure when a minor is found abandoned. The attendant's words hung in the air, heavier than the desert heat. They took your license plate number for the report. Sylvia made a sound like a wounded animal, a choked-off sob. The relief that had flickered across her face was gone, replaced by a gray, waxy panic. This wasn't something she could smooth over with fake apologies or crocodile tears. It was official. It was a report. Just then, I saw it. The distant but unmistakable pulse of red and blue lights painting the twilight sky. They grew brighter and brighter, and a moment later, a highway patrol car pulled into the gas station lot, followed closely by my uncle's sedan, which skidded to a stop in a cloud of gravel and dust. The whole scene felt like something out of a movie. The flashing lights strobed across our faces, turning the surreal moment into a nightmare. My uncle was out of his car before it had even fully stopped. I have never seen a look like that on his face. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, quiet fury that was 1,000 times more terrifying than any screaming rage. He didn't even glance, at our SUV. His eyes were locked on the police car, where the back door was opening, and Diego got out. He looked so small next to the officer, his shoulders hunched, his face pale and streaked with dirt. But he was safe. He was okay. My uncle closed the distance between them in 3 long strides and wrapped Diego in a hug so tight it looked like he was trying to fuse them back together. That was my cue. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, a cold, clear fuel. I got out of the car. Sylvia was just sitting there, catatonic, staring at the scene. Clara was huddled in the back, her face buried in her hands. I walked past them, my phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. I approached my uncle as he was talking to the officer, his voice low and tight with controlled rage. Diego saw me, and his eyes, wide and still in shock, met mine. I gave him a small, shaky nod. "That's her," my uncle said to the officer, pointing a trembling finger at our car, at Sylvia behind the wheel. "That's his mother." The officer, a woman with a calm, no-nonsense face, turned to me. "And you are?" "I'm their cousin," I said. "I was in the car. I have something you need to hear." And right there, in the pulsating red and blue light, with the smell of gasoline and desert dust in the air, I held up my phone. I hit play. My uncle and the officer stood perfectly still as Sylvia's voice, tinny and shrill, filled the space between us. "She's lying. She's a manipulative little liar. We were going to circle back. It was just a lesson. He needed to learn." Then my own calm, recorded voice. "Uncle Marco, she said she was doing it to show Clara she always comes first." I watched Sylvia's face through the windshield as her own words condemned her. She crumpled. It wasn't dramatic. It was like a puppet with its strings cut. Her whole body just seemed to collapse in on itself, her head sinking into her hands. The checkmate was absolute. The immediate aftermath was a blur of quiet, official procedure. Sylvia was cited for child endangerment. There was a stone-faced agreement made right there in the gravel lot between my uncle and the officer that Sylvia would not be driving her children anywhere for the foreseeable future. But the most devastating blow didn't come from the law. It came from Clara. She had gotten out of the car at some point and was standing by herself, watching everything unfold. Her face was a mess of tear-stained confusion. She wasn't looking at Diego or my uncle. She was staring at her mother, who was now sobbing uncontrollably in the front seat. But there was no sympathy in Clara's expression. There was just a kind of horrified awe, the look of someone seeing a monster they had always believed was a saint. When my uncle finally walked over to her, his face softened slightly. Come on, Clara, let's go home. Clara just nodded, her eyes still fixed on Sylvia. Then she whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Can I come live with you? I don't want to go with her. It was a kill shot. I watched the words hit my aunt, and it was more brutal than any police citation. Her head snapped up, her face a mask of disbelief and agony. Her entire world, the one she had so carefully constructed with Clara at its center, had just been leveled. Later, after the police left and my uncle had driven off with both of my cousins, I was left to drive the SUV back with my aunt. The silence was absolute, but as the adrenaline finally faded, it didn't leave relief in its place. It left something heavy and cold in the pit of my stomach. I had done it. I protected Diego. I had forced a reckoning that was decades overdue. Sylvia got what she deserved. But I didn't just let her get caught. I meticulously built the cage, baited the trap, and then handed the authorities the key with the recording. I had wanted more than to just rescue Diego. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted to see her crumble. Seeing Clara's heartbreak, seeing my aunt reduced to a sobbing mess, knowing I had deliberately and methodically orchestrated it all. It felt complicated. It felt heavy. Was my calculated need to force a consequence just as manipulative in its own way as her twisted lessons? I didn't just want justice. I wanted revenge, and I got it. I'm just not sure how I'm supposed to feel about it. It's been a few months since the road trip from hell. As you can probably guess, Sylvia and I haven't spoken a single word. I'm blocked on her phone, on social, media, everywhere. From what I've pieced together through family gossip, she lost her custody weekends pending a full family court evaluation and mandated therapy. She's apparently telling everyone that I had a psychotic break and manipulated the situation. Clara and Diego are living full-time with my Uncle Marco now. And honestly, for the first time in their lives, they seem okay. They're healing. I saw Diego last week, and he was actually laughing. A real, loud, uninhibited laugh that I haven't heard since he was a little kid. He told me he and Clara have started playing video games together in the evenings. He said she's been apologizing a little bit each day for all the years she let their mom turn them against each other. It feels like for the first time, they're just allowed to be a brother and sister, not a villain and a victim. Seeing that, it feels like everything I did was worth it. But the rest of the family? It's a war zone. My phone has become a minefield of passive-aggressive texts and angry voicemails. The family is split clean down the middle. Half of them are treating me like I'm some kind of hero. My own dad called me brave, saying Sylvia has been an emotional tyrant for decades and that someone finally had to stand up to her. They say I saved Diego from years more of escalating abuse. The other half, though, they're acting like I'm the villain. My grandmother called me sobbing, saying I had publicly humiliated my aunt and brought shame and police to our family's doorstep. My other aunt sent me a long, blistering email about how I was cold and calculating, that I should have just screamed at Sylvia or forced her to turn the car around instead of setting a trap. They all keep repeating the same line like it's a mantra. You should have handled it privately. Privately? How do you privately handle someone abandoning their own son on the side of a highway? They think recording her and involving my uncle and the police was a step too far, an act of unforgivable cruelty designed to ruin her life, not just to save Diego. And that's the part that's eating me alive at night. I know what my aunt did was monstrous. There is zero doubt in my mind about that. But they're not entirely wrong about my motives. When I pulled out that phone, I wasn't just thinking about getting Diego back in the car. I made a cold, calculated choice. I wanted to gather undeniable proof. I wanted to ensure she faced a public and legal downfall that she couldn't twist or lie her way out of. I didn't just want to stop her in that moment. I wanted to make sure she could never, ever do something like that again. I wanted to burn her whole stage down so she couldn't perform on it anymore. I saw my chance to end her reign of terror, and I took it, knowing full well it would detonate a bomb in the center of our family. So, Reddit, this is what I need to know. Aida, for maliciously complying with her cruelty in a way that guaranteed her destruction, even if it meant tearing our family apart.